Welcome back to Brain Pro Metal Talk. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification for our daily updates. And also, please don't forget to answer the question of the day. Thanks for listening.
We're honestly only working off
the Kiss album Crazy Nights. I am from Ireland, where the album and especially the title track is huge. Okay, so Dave lives in Boston now, originally from Ireland. And I am aware that the song Crazy Nights was a huge hit in the UK and throughout certain parts of Europe and certainly England. Dave continues, songs like the title track, Reason to Live, Bang Bang You, Good Girl Gone Bad, all great songs from a very underrated album. I read the book you were talking about, Danger Zone, The Making of Crazy Nights. So a couple of questions. What do you think of that demo, Sword and Stone, that was left off? Another great song. And what's your thoughts on the album in general? And what was their touring? What was their touring draw so random on that tour? And why do you think that album wasn't bigger, on par with, say, Slippery When Wet or Whitesnake 87? All right, Dave, Crazy Nights from Kiss, which came out in, I think, 87. It's interesting, whenever people talk about the very polarizing Kiss records, they usually talk about Dynasty because that had a disco hit on it, or they talk about The Elder because it was a concept album that flopped, or maybe they talk about Carnival of Souls because it was kind of like the Kiss grunge record. But nobody ever really talks about Crazy Nights being polarizing, meaning it's a love-hate thing. And I think that over time, it's definitely become a record that has been thought of as polarizing. There are Kiss fans like Dave here who loves it and others that hate it. The reason why people don't like it is it's an extremely polished record. It has a lot of keyboards and synth throughout the record. And, it just wasn't edgy and heavy and hard enough for Kiss fans. Ron Nevison, who produced it, has told me personally and has been on this show and said, in retrospect, he would have loved it to be a little edgier and a little beefier, and he would love maybe taking another crack at mixing it at one point. But you got to understand, that record was very much a sign of the times. There's the thing with Kiss in the 80s especially is that Kiss did so many pioneering things in the 70s with their stage show and their marketing and their merchandising. In the 80s, it was very different. And that wasn't uncommon. There were a lot of bands from the 70s who really had a hard time figuring out what to do in the 80s because they were up against younger bands that, were really, they were viewed. I mean, a lot of these bands like Kiss were viewed as old already in the 80s. So they battled that, and for all of the innovations Kiss did in the 70s, for the 80s, you can absolutely point to them being way more followers than leaders. They chased what was happening. They chased the look, they chased the sound, and the whole MTV thing and all that. So Kiss looked ridiculous during Crazy Nights, but no, everybody did if you look at it in retrospect. But the biggest thing that they did, especially at that time, was try to do that commercial rock thing. Get on the radio, get hits, something that really eluded them. So they went and hired the producer who worked his magic for Ozzy with The Ultimate Sin and Shot in the Dark, worked his magic for Heart, did so many, Ron Nevison was really the guy at that time for getting hard rock bands polished up, commercialized, and on the radio. And that is exactly why Kiss hired him. Paul Stanley in particular waited for him, wanted him so bad that he thought he would be the secret sauce. And it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen in a big way. Now, Kiss, for that album, Crazy Crazy Nights did okay in the U.S. Reason to Live did okay in the U.S., but way better known as a music video than airplay. And outside of that, I mean, it did okay, but not that great. And the tour needed a lot of help and a lot of support. But I got news for you. All the Kiss tours in the 80s did. The Hot in the Shade tour, which I thought was the best tour and lineup of the 80s, that was Winger and Slaughter, who were red hot at that time, two bands opening up. So, Kiss struggled at times throughout the 80s. And although they had some love from MTV and some airplay, they kind of flapped their wings trying different things. And Crazy Nights was a direct reaction to trying to make their Slippery When Wet, their Heart, just something, really trying to get that radio thing happening. And it just didn't. It didn't connect for them here. Maybe the radio folks thought it was a little forced. Maybe, people thought it just wasn't edgy enough. It was too synthy. I don't know. Finally, Dave, how do I feel about the record? I really like it. But see, I like power pop stuff. I like poppy hard rock. I always did. So I like the record. I like the production. To me, Ron Nevison is always also known for getting great vocal performances. I think some of Paul's vocals on that record are incredible, although Nevison has said many times that he felt Paul was pushing it and trying to sing too high on that record, and that was going to haunt him down the line, and man, was he right. But he was singing almost in an unnatural register, but again, it was very competitive. You're talking about the mid-'80s. Everybody was trying to look better, at least in their eyes, as the other guy at that time, and everybody was trying to sound better and who could get the biggest choruses and the biggest producers and the biggest music videos. It was all about that at that time. But certainly Crazy Nights did not succeed in a way that they thought it would, given having a big name producer and the change in sound. I said I was going to try to go quicker, and then you know me, I get yapping, and here we go. Just did 6 minutes on a 32-year-old Kiss record. So I'll move on, Dave. Thank you for listening. This is Diana from Sunnyvale, California. Eddie, I'm a longtime listener and also a fan from That Metal Show. I've been really interested in your comments about Aerosmith from your recent trip to Vegas. I was also at the Thursday night show. I'm one of those fans that knows the big ones better than the deep tracks. I typically consume music off the radio and now Sirius XM, but I also play a lot of CDs at home, even for a song that I've heard a lot. I wouldn't necessarily remember, just trying to get to a pretty long email. I enjoyed every moment. I enjoyed the songs. I love the deep tracks. Chip Away the Stone was my favorite song of the night. It was definitely not one that I knew well, but I loved it. Just want to share with you that your less music-educated fans can appreciate deep tracks too. I think it's awesome that Aerosmith is switching things up and playing a mix of their catalog. By the way, in section 201, we had no mix issues, so for once, maybe our experience was better further away from the stage and at a better price too. So great that Aerosmith is still such a fantastic experience so late in their career. My first time seeing them, and I was just blown away. Thanks for keeping it real, Diana from Sunnyvale. Diana, thank you. I just skimmed through some stuff because your email was a little long, and I'm just trying to keep it moving. But I think what Diana's responding to is that, I think it's incredible that Aerosmith is doing something where they're changing their set every night on their residency. They're flying in and taking out anywhere from 3 to 4 songs a night in their set list. And a band like Aerosmith, who legitimately has 15, 20 hits, could easily do a set of nothing but those songs and make a Vegas crowd very happy. But to me, to their extreme credit, they actually put in some deep tracks like Seasons of Wither, like Moving Out, like Kings and Queens, like Last Child, like Lord of the Thighs. And for a hardcore guy like me, for Aerosmith, that is gold. That is the ultimate. Doesn't mean I don't like the hits, but you know what I'm saying. I think Diana's point is she doesn't really know the deep tracks, but she still enjoyed them. The problem is when now Diana seems like she's a little more adventurous in terms of music she doesn't know. But the problem with the whole thing with the deep tracks when artists play them is the audience dies because they just don't know it. The air comes out of the building. And, they're not singing along and all that. So that's why artists have, sometimes bristle about doing them. It's funny because a friend of mine that works for Aerosmith, I said, well, if they only did this song and then this song, and I was running down, of course, I was taking out hits and replacing them with, deep tracks. And he's like, yeah. He goes, you keep making a set list like that. And he said, the concession lines will be really long. The people selling beer will love you. And I've been accused of that before. Once Cheap Trick let me make their whole set list, and it was a total tune-out for, again, what was a casino audience. But I think it's great that Aerosmith does that. The mix issues Diana was alluding to is, if you heard my recap on Monday of Aerosmith, I just feel that theater tries to do some sort of simulated surround thing, and it results in the show sounding very different depending upon where you're sitting and not always the best mix. So that's something hopefully they can work out. We'll